Hi, I'm Denise Lorenzetti, and I'm the director for the Fleishman Center for Career and Professional Development at Binghamton University. And we want to thank our power panel for being with us here tonight of alumni from Binghamton University that are going to provide you some very valuable insights amongst what's going on in the job market during COVID. For the students that are online tonight, thank you for joining us. And from the Fleishman Center, we all really miss working with you on campus. And we're getting used to the new norm of working with you online, and we're really glad you're taking advantage of this webinar tonight because you're really going to get some great insights. As we've been talking with students, we get a lot of questions of what's going on in the industry, what's going to happen with my internship. How is this going to impact me? So we thought we'd get together some alumni to talk through this. And our alumni, they represent a variety of industries and are they assist with their company's workforce hiring and help maintain the operations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of the panelists if you can say who you are, what company you work from. I can tell you right now, one is very obvious, the company that they work for, and what your role is at the company. And also we have to have some fun here. So maybe a fun fact of at your time at Binghamton University, what was memorable. So Lisa, you want to start us off?
Happy to, Denise. Thank you very much for having me. And thanks to the students who are with us tonight. Really appreciate you taking some time out. My name is Lisa Abbott. I'm the Senior Vice President for Human Resources and Community Affairs at Lifespan Corporation. We are the largest healthcare system in the state of Rhode Island, have about 15,000 employees, and it's an interesting time to be in healthcare. One interesting fact from Binghamton, I was Dan's RD.
And Dan was well behaved.
He was a perfect role model of a student. Yeah.
Well, that being said, Dan.
Yes, Lisa, I will pay you later. Thank you very much. Denise, thank you. And hi, everyone. I'm Dan Black, and I'm wearing my Binghamton colors today. Proud graduate from the School of Management in well, in the 90s. We'll leave it there. Today I work at EY, formerly known as Ernst & Young, and I am our global head of recruiting. So I'm responsible for bringing on all of our new hires at all levels, anywhere in the firm. So in a regular year, that amounts to about 90 to 100,000 hires per year. So I'm based in New York, but spending a lot of time these days, virtually with recruits all around the world. So thanks for having me. Oh, my story at Binghamton, I did meet my spouse there. And then I went back, I was a commencement speaker 2 years back and brought my kids there. And now my daughter wants to be a Binghamton student. So we're doing something right.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And Jim?
I'm Jim Bankoski. I work at Google. I am a distinguished engineer. I am not in recruiting or HR, but I do help out on both of those fronts. Google has engineers do interviews and recruiting and various other things, and I've been involved in that process all the way through. I work on the Chrome team. If you may have heard of Chrome, I hope.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I had a big green van at Binghamton that broke down and became kind of we called it the freshman dorm for a while.
Oh.
It earned my nickname. I became Scooby. I still have a bunch of people to this day that will call me Scoob from Binghamton. So.
Oh, that's a good fun fact. Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that. Actually, I have a fun fact too. So as with Dan, I'll just say in the 90s, I graduated from Watson, and then in 97, I graduated School of Management with my MBA. Worked out in industry for 25 years, and here I am, full circle. That's why I always say, usually a career path, when students come and say, I want to do this, and I'll say to you, it's usually a little bit like this, So, all right. Well, what we wanted to do is take a poll from our students to see basically what year you're in, whether it be freshmen, juniors, seniors, masters. So if you can go ahead and fill that out. All right. Doesn't look like, oh. Okay, here we go. All right, so, and we were talking about this before, we were kind of guessing who would we see a lot of, and we see a good number of seniors and juniors, and I'm really happy to see a little bit of everyone, which is great, because it's never too early to start these types of conversations. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. So one of the things I try not to do too much of, because it can be overwhelming, is watch the news. And when you watch the news, a lot of times it's a pretty grim, negative outlook. So, which has our students concerned, right? Well, again, what does this mean for us? So, just wanted to ask, from your industries and your perspectives, how are you handling hiring amid COVID-19? We've heard everything from, rescinding offers to business as normal. Well, I don't, there's no normal anymore, but business normal, virtual. Jim, if you can start us off with what Google is doing, would be great.
Well, Google has certainly cut down hiring for this time. There's a lot of press about it that came out. People who have offers are coming to work and starting. My team has 2. We are, all the people who we offered internships are actually, we're trying really hard to find internships projects for everyone internal. Some of the projects were on teams that were doing sort of work that required internal kind of super private access. We're trying to find different internships. My team is Chrome, and we have an open source project called Chromium. So we're hoping to, we were asked to greatly expand that so that we could get, more of the interns who were going to work on things that we didn't feel comfortable on people's home computers. So hopefully everybody that had an internship will actually get to do an internship remotely. Hopefully hiring comes back when we get through this crisis.
Great, thank you so much. And Dan, how about what's going on at EY?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot. So at EY, I think for a lot of our lateral, experience hire positions, a lot of them are on pause. I think, Jim, similar to what you're saying, is like, hey, we want to, see how things play out. Anyone that has an offer with us, we're honoring that offer at any level, including interns, including full-time hires. If you've accepted an offer, that offer is good. And a lot of companies are doing that now. I've seen a number of caveats. Which is, hey, you still have an offer, but that internship is going to be virtual, or you're still going to start with us full time, but instead of July, it may be, September or October. And I understand that can cause some angst for candidates, but I think the main thing that I've seen of other large employers as well is, we're in this with you, and we don't. The last thing any employer wants to do, whether it's Google or EY, any company, is have someone come in and then have a terrible experience, right? So we're right now onboarding thousands of people over the course of the last 2 months, 100% virtually. And that's not ideal. I mean, to have someone start, they never come to an office, they don't meet anyone face to face, your laptop shows up in the mail, you get trained via distance learning, and we're making it work because we want to honor those commitments, but it would be much better to have people come in and have a regular onboarding and inculcation into the organization. So we are, we're kind of flattening out a little bit at this point with full expectation that as we're on the other side of this, and we will be on the other side of this, we'll see those go up. One last thing I'll just add, Denise, is just because I'm on pretty regular calls with other people that do what I do at other organizations, is that there's some disproportionate effects here, right? So if you're in my industry, certainly, in professional services, if you're in, certain industries, it's kind of a flattening. Then you have people that are severely negative, right? So hospitality and travel and the like, and then increases. And I won't steal Lisa's thunder here, but in healthcare, and supply chains, and in grocery and transport of goods, those kinds of things. So there are some spots where there's still actually a lot of activity. You may have read about Walmart, Amazon. Some of them are hiring in the tens of thousands of new jobs that didn't exist 2 months ago. So there's some of that happening as well, some arbitrage in the talent market.
Yeah, and I'd probably imagine too, the size of the company matters, right? A smaller firm may have a much bigger impact. If you're a larger company, you weather the storm a little bit better. So. Great, thanks. And Lisa, healthcare.
It's a little bit of both, right? So we have been, anybody who's ever worked in healthcare knows that we're a little slow. It's not like working at EY or working at Google in terms of flexible work arrangements and the ability for people to telecommute and so forth. So we've really had to up our game in that space. And we have, couple of thousand people working from home now, which is a couple of thousand more than a month and a half ago. We're doing a blend of things. So we have paused some hiring. So people who had offers in the queue, if they're not clinical, in other words, if they're not a nurse or a certified nursing assistant or a physician or somebody, as Dan mentioned, in supply chain or laboratory services or something like that, we too are honoring the offer. We're just postponing the start date. And we know we'll lose some people, but I think right now in this market, people appreciate that commitment, and it's what we need to do. On the other end of the spectrum, in the clinical space, particularly given that we're staffing a 600-bed field hospital to manage the surge if that happens to come. I mean, we pulled out all the stops. I mean, we called on people who are semi-retired or retired. We've called on agencies that we use during these influxes that we need to have, and really been overwhelmed with the number of people who want to just be part of the solution. So on the clinical side, we're doing a ton of hiring. So for those of you who are nursing students, the healthcare track, give me a call. Have I got work for you?
Yeah. So it's great, right? A good mix of what's going on in industries. And Dan, thanks for more overview of not just the industries that are represented here today, but just in general what's going on. And it makes sense, obviously, like with travel, like for example, vacation this summer, going off to Europe, not going to happen, right? So things like that have, industries like that have really taken a hard hit. So how has recruitment for internships or full-time jobs changed in this virtual world? So how's that looking? Because, as Lisa said, right, in higher ed, the same way, right? This is all new for us. There was no working remotely. So, Dan, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take a first stab. So let's start with the obvious. So anyone on this call will know so much more is now being done via video, right? So we have video interviews, video presentations, video webcasts, Zoom is a verb now, right? Or WebEx and all the other platforms. So, and the level of preparedness that organizations had, or the familiarity they had with those kinds of platforms, has dictated how smoothly that transition has gone from a recruitment standpoint. So I think that's kind of the now, next, beyond. So that's the now. People are just trying to make do and deal with, physically not being able to be in the same place. The next, and from a recruitment standpoint, I think certainly is, okay, how, if this is going to be sustained, or somewhat sustained or partially sustained, we've heard all kinds of things on how long this could last, and depending on when we have a vaccine and when they ease social distancing. It's how do you create other experiences, recruiting, internships, et cetera, that are not going to be the same because they're not live, but they still have value to them. And so, utilizing different platforms. So whether it's something like Google Docs and being able to collaborate together, I'm a big fan, by the way. So being able, collaboration tools that you can use, and you can do work across platforms. I think crowd sharing is another thing that we're starting to see a lot more of. And so the best organizations that I've seen, and the EY is an example I know I'm very familiar with, rather than saying, hey, let's take what it was and make it the same, but virtual, we're saying, let's take what it was. We can't do that exact thing. What other experiences can we provide, whether that's for onboarding or an internship or an experience at work? What can we do that's going to be of value to you, so that when we do return to, I call it the new abnormal. I heard that today. I
like that. That's a true statement there. The new abnormal.
So that when we get back to that, when you look back on this time of your life and your career, you're like, man, it was wacky. It was weird. I didn't love it. I wish we could have gotten through it, but I learned these X number of skills, or I was able to collaborate in this way. That's what all the best companies are thinking about.
Yeah, great. And Jim or Lisa, do you want to add to that, or?
I can add. Google has always done video conference as part of its process. We used to do 2 video conference calls. You'd be doing your interview on a Google Doc usually, and you'd both be typing in. The person would ask questions and see what you're typing and maybe comment on that. So it's very similar. All of the interviews that we're doing are going through that process now. Again, not ideal. We like in person, in part because you can sell the company. You sell, here, come to our location. You can see the beautiful campus, and you can do all of those things. So it's not ideal, but I would say, doing VC it's the main difference, and it's also something you can practice and get better at. So
for Google, do they have like virtual tours now so people can see what the cool campus looks like?
We do. We've always had those. I don't think it's quite the same as being there and walking around and seeing it. There's a bunch of, Google has a bunch of recruiting videos that go through, typical day of the life. And actually, one of my friends, a former Binghamton grad, is featured in one of our recruiting videos.
There you go.
So,
there you have it. And Lisa, how about you? As higher ed is the same, we typically didn't work like this.
So we're getting better, not specifically for internships, but just hiring in general, because we are hiring. So we're trying to do at least first round screenings by Skype, video conference, Zoom, whatever modality works. But there's nothing like seeing people real time. And so there are a lot of managers, it's really difficult to make a final hiring decision without creating some opportunity for direct exposure, if you will. Appropriate social distancing. I mean, there are some people we still administer certain tests for people to work here in the clinical space, and so you have to come on site for those, but they're very few and far between. So we're starting to really just get comfortable with this modality, and Denise, this, it's just higher ed is worse than healthcare.
Wow, has it been hard?
But
we're learning a lot, though.
I would say, the things that, 3 months ago took 3 to 6 months or years to get done, we got done in 3 weeks. So, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, and we are forced. And I loved, Dan, what you said about now, next, and beyond. So let's figure out what this means and how we interact with each other, and maybe expedite and create efficiencies in some of our processes using technology.
Yeah. And the one thing I'm curious is that with the virtual recruitment, right, students are used to coming to your doors, right? What's that look like then to now, as far as this whole virtual world versus I show up at your door, I get to meet somebody? What should they anticipate?
I think, I'll just kick that off and just say, I think that someday they will meet somebody. This too should pass. It really will. I mean, and it's a tough time. We want to meet people. We want those students at our doors, and I think, Dan, you do a ton more of this than I do. But there's nothing, and you come to appreciate, the value of a face-to-face anything right now, whether it's an interview or a meeting or a get-together and so while I think this can, technology is a great enabler of efficiency, I think ultimately we will get back to, the next normal, and it will involve face-to-face. We just have to bide our time because it's the safe thing to do right now.
Yeah, I know even from a personal standpoint, I've lived in the same community for 25 years, and I probably didn't know my neighbors as good as I know now. And you go out there and everyone's like, hey, how's it going? People are waving, So, Lisa, to your point, I think we're all craving that at this point and look forward to getting back to that. So, like you said, I wholeheartedly agree with you. This too shall pass. We just have to find our way through it. What would you say during these times are the most critical skills in demand in your industry? You're talking to students right now saying, okay, this COVID is it's rough, but here's some skills that would really help you to stand out in hiring right now amongst this time. And why don't we, Jim, how about we'll go to you?
Well, it's a bit hard given that we've slowed down our hiring, but I will say that people that have any expertise in video are getting hired very quickly. Video conferencing, video, anything. I think in general, being able to maybe write code of any sort, to do analysis, things along those lines are very helpful. There's a ton of effort being put into improved infrastructure and making sure things, that we're able to handle much greater loads on our servers. So those are the kind of things that I know we're currently focused on. I don't know that makes for a long-term, change in anything.
Yeah, the technology is definitely obviously a big one right now. How about Dan? What would you say to the student?
Yeah. I mean, I'd agree with Jim. Technology, there's certainly some needs there. So when I think about where we haven't really slowed down our recruiting, and again, this is from an EY, from our sector, certainly technology, restructuring and transformations, tax, the CARES Act here in the States is causing for a lot of need for information and consultation on tax law, carrying, not to bore you with accounting talk, but net operating loss carrybacks and carry forwards. These are all kinds of things that, but I think what Jim was saying, that there's some domain knowledges that are rising in popularity. That said, there are still the core set of things that we look for, and I would argue that probably many of our organizations look for, like resilience, like leadership, like being able to adapt. Like, yes, this situation is awful, but people that are still out there doing what they can to help their communities, help themselves, help their career, that shows something to a potential employer about how you approach setbacks. And while I pray that we'll never have a setback like this again, there's going to be plenty of setbacks in your career. I know I can speak for all of us on that. And so the resilience that you can show, the attitude you can show. I think the one surprise one for me, I'm not surprised to see. I'm just surprised that it's getting the attention it's getting, and good that it is around well-being and wellness. So EY has a drop-in call every single day that you can join whenever you want. It's completely optional, on mindfulness and breathing and some techniques and things like that. And I've joined it a couple of times because this, you mentioned it earlier, Denise, you can watch this news cycle and just make yourself, in a spiral. But those people that know how to take care of themselves mentally and physically, especially in a time like this, that's a skill that, under pressure, a lot of employers are going to find value in, regardless of what your domain knowledge or your technical skills are. So that's something that, I think if nothing else, if, your job fell through, your internship fell through, but you can still say, here's how I'm maintaining my vivacious approach to life, or how I'm keeping myself fit, both mentally, physically, emotionally. Those are really, at a premium, and will continue to be as we get beyond this.
Yeah. I felt like the first week we all went through, I felt like I had whiplash, like, go this way, no, go this way,
Sure.
So to be flexible and adaptable, I think is just so key during these times, and also to be hopeful, to continue to, like you said, Lisa, we will get through this. And how about you, Lisa? What are you seeing as far as this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Dan said came to mind for me, especially around resilience. And I think, in healthcare in particular, whether we're watching the news or we're rounding, I mean, I spend a fair amount of time rounding on the floors where these patients are being cared for. And I have precisely this many problems in my life by comparison. And that gives me gratitude. I'm grateful that nurses do what they do and doctors do what they do. And so I urge people now, in addition to the technical skills that are emerging that we've talked about, clinical skills in the healthcare setting, supply chain is huge. I mean, so there are these specific technical skill sets that people who have them are really going to emerge, and this is going to be a fabulous time for them. I urge everybody to really practice compassion. This is a really hard time for lots of people that you're seeing and people that you're not seeing. And if you can come out of this with some experiences that are definable, where you were able to extend compassion to a family member or a friend or a neighbor or a fellow student, create your social circles and boost one another up. I mean, this is not a time to be a downer, because we'll get through this. And what will be really important is the people who are on the front lines of this pandemic. They're going to need a break, and they're going to need all of you that are out there who are fresh and ready and willing and able. They're going to need you, because they're going to need a break. And so that's what I would offer in addition to what Jim and Dan had to say.
You're going to probably need like a 3-year break.
Yeah, hopefully only like 3 weeks or so. But
yeah, Lisa's like, no. Wait a second.
Can you have them all go out? We can't have them all go out at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the positives coming out of this, and I think you see both, right? You see people behaving not in such good ways, but then I'm looking at the amazing people out there doing such amazing things and bringing out the good, and it's just been
incredible,
heartwarming to see. So what we wanted to do is take another poll with the students. And how are you feeling right now about job and internship prospects among COVID? So a poll will be going up, and anything from your extremely comfortable, we'll see how many people are extremely comfortable, to neutral, to extremely worried, to not currently doing a job or internship. So if you can just fill that out, we just wanted to get a sense for that. And as we're waiting to fill that out, what the next question I'll do is, I have a feeling there's going to be some concern. Okay, and just taking a wild guess. What do you think students can do during this time right now to position themselves for a job? So maybe they did have a job that was rescinded, something fell through. What can they be doing to better themselves at this point, to make them more, when this passed, to really make them more marketable? So, yeah, there you go, a bit over 50%, right? A lot. So we got a lot worried, extremely worried.
Yeah.
And what we will all say is that is completely natural, right? And I think at this point, even all of us right here, right, we're concerned, but we're just slowly working through it. I think for me too, it's just not looking at the whole picture, looking at all that news at once. Dan, that just freaks me out. So just looking at a little step at a time. So what do you think students can do, as we've just seen, a lot are very worried, to help themselves out right now?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in first. Do something with the time. Our tendency, inertia can easily take over if we don't have some structure. So create structure for yourself. Practice, for those of you who are seniors who are looking to jump right into that job market. Create circles where you can practice interviewing with one another. You can, take advantage of what the Fleishman Center has to offer and the university, but don't become complacent and don't let inertia take over. It's easy for that to happen. Learn a new skill. Go out and learn a language. Download Rosetta Stone and learn a language. Volunteer. There's plenty of volunteering that you can do safely and with the appropriate social distancing. And I think your resume will stand out if you can demonstrate that you did something during this very strange time that we're in.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And Dan or Jim, you want to go ahead and add to that, or?
Yeah, I agree. I'm in the business of hiring tens of thousands of students, and I will tell you right now, the vast majority of them, before they come and join us, have no experience whatsoever in my industry. So the fact that that the first job maybe disappeared, or you can't find that first job or that internship, that's not something I was looking for on your resume anyway. So whether it's continuing to find volunteer work, whether it's working locally in an essential business, those are the kinds of things I love to see on resumes anyway. People that have been working for their, the local grocery for years and years while they put themselves through college. So there's that. I think the other thing that I've been telling people is just breathe. This is, we don't know how finite, but this is going to be finite. And I've talked to so many people up to this point that are so worried, like, oh my gosh, I'm not finding any jobs. Well, of course not. We're in this crazy, America on pause. It's not something you're doing wrong. Find a balance of, both good news. Oh, looks like Lisa has a friend there. I love that. I love my dog is downstairs, so he'd be right up here with me. But it's okay to as long as you're keeping yourself, to Lisa's great point, keeping yourself active, keeping yourself challenged, learning new things. It's okay to say to not have something lined up just this minute. And I know that's hard for you, especially, Binghamton students are like hard charging, type A, go, go, go. But cut yourself a little slack to say, hey, this is difficult on everyone. And as long as I'm keeping myself active and engaged and healthy and the like, when this does end, and it will, you'll have that much more to show for it, as opposed to being frustrated that, you can't get the exact job path you had lined up didn't pan out.
Yeah, and that's what we've been trying to tell students, that this is not an ideal world that we're in.
No.
Right? So you may have to take a look at, again, we talked about some industries that are booming that they may have not thought about right off the bat. Being very flexible to say, okay, well, again, may not get my dream job, but there are so many opportunities out there. So just to be, again, flexible, adaptable, and keep going back to those. Jim, anything that
I was just a couple. I like Lisa's learn a new skill. Of course, it could be she said language. I was immediately excited thinking she was talking programming language, which I think is useful.
She's gonna go learn C tonight, C+.
Excellent. Python probably is a better one today.
Okay, Python.
Especially for people that aren't actually hoping to be computer programmers. Maybe you're doing analysis. But I was going to throw out that didn't hear anyone else. There's no reason not to ping people on LinkedIn. Or I have been kind of cold pinged on LinkedIn from Binghamton students, from people who have some connection, who are just asking, hey, what's it look like? Is this more interesting or that? Forming connections now, if you're unable to get a job, seems like a possible good way to go. I will tell you, at Google, and I think just about every other company that you'll talk to in tech, a referral is the easiest way in the door. And if you're able to meet and make a connection with someone through any common interest, it's a good use of your time.
That's great. And as working in the Fleishman Center, and our career consultants are constantly talking to students about the value of their network, right? And we're getting questions, well, geez, because of social distancing, we can't network, but right, there's so many other ways that we've been doing it through LinkedIn, through other platforms. So thank you, Jim, for sharing what we've been telling people. So let's see. So there we have some questions coming in. So I'll just go ahead and read one. For younger students who are relying on income from internship opportunities this summer, aside from continuing to gain new skills and using this time for self-betterment, what advice can you give to those students? So Dan, you want to take that one?
I'm happy to. So, internship opportunities, for income specifically, there are lots of other opportunities. And it's already been mentioned a few times that, it may not be what you had planned. It may not be an internship. It might be like a summer job, if you will. But if it's for the income purposes, I open up LinkedIn. Jim made a great point about open up LinkedIn, and on my home screen is who's hiring right now. Yeah. And you can filter that by your area, by your location. And I was talking to a friend of mine, his son, who had lost an internship with another company, And I said, Instacart is hiring like crazy. You should check, or what happened. And he said, well, that's not ideal. I'm like, we're not in ideal. We're past ideal.
We're far from ideal.
Yeah. And so I think for this time anyway, being willing to and to separate internship experience. I got to make money. I want to learn something that's going to be useful, in my career. Those two things might not coexist for the next couple of months, but it's the next couple of months.
Yeah.
And I, the financial bite of this crisis is real. And so I think it's just a matter of making some adjustments to kind of make ends meet. And then, not worrying so much about whether that keeps you on the path of getting you to the corner office or the operating room in 15 years. Right. I think it's making some of those adjustments is the best advice I can give you.
Great. Thank you, Dan. And we have another one, and it says, thank you for this helpful session. For each of the panelists, how long do you feel your company thinks the status quo will continue in terms of hiring? So we're going to be at this either holding or not hiring. Crystal balls.
I would say that this pandemic has changed the landscape of healthcare forever. I mean, we are doing most doctor's office visits via telehealth, right? So we had no telehealth, and it was going to take us years to get there until this happened, and then it took weeks. And so we're all going to redefine what the future looks like. Dan's earlier point about now, next, and beyond. We'll open things up when it's safe to do that. And I don't think any of us have a crystal ball. And I think a lot of it will depend on people being responsible and washing hands, social distancing, all of those kinds of things. But I think, one of the most important things is, to Dan's point, none of this is ideal, but that's what flexibility and resilience and pivoting are all about, is to say, all right, if making money is important, then maybe that grocery store down the street doesn't look so bad until the new normal takes shape and you're able to get back out there and get something that's more consistent with what you're envisioning right now. But you've got to be willing to take something a little different and be flexible, and you never know what that might lead to.
Yeah, and I think I was talking to one student. They're like, "Well, I don't like Plan B or C," and this is where we're at, right?
Yeah.
Some of us might get to Plan Z by the time this is all over with. So just, again, being very flexible.
Just, if I could add one more comment about that, very difficult because you're trying to plan. Be mindful that in the universes we all live in, people are losing jobs that they've worked at for years, right? So there are furloughs and layoffs and a lot of scary stuff happening for people who are trying to provide for families and are trying to get closer to retirement and those sorts of things. And they're flexible and they're pivoting because that's what's important to do right now. Not ideal. So I urge you, again, I'm back to resiliency and compassion for those around you and a little bit of patience as the world, takes a step toward, right sizing.
Okay, so there's a lot of questions coming in. So how do you bring attention to the skills you mentioned in the application? How do you make sure the recruiters, hiring managers notice your application, especially during this time? Dan, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm still seeing a lot of applications. I mean, being the recruiter on the call, I knew I'd get
I'd get. Do you know how I've heard of that?
Yeah. So I foresee for the foreseeable, the recruiting process as defined in your minds as students is going to be greatly condensed. So it's going to be virtual in a lot of cases. It'll be video for a while, but even as we start to return back to some sense of normalcy and in person, it's still going to be condensed and smaller, right? And so what that means is that you need to make sure that you are highlighting those things that make you much more efficiently and much more effectively. So whereas, in the past, you might have had 3 or 4 different opportunities to be in front of an employer. You met him at a career fair, then you saw him at the firm night or the employer night, and then you made a connection over here, and then the interview. You may only get, a 20-minute or 30-minute interview on, via video. So you got to make sure you are leading with those very best qualities. So, resilience and leadership, and you can't save that for another time. There might not be another time, or it might be a while till there's another time. So item number one is make sure that you're talking about those things that make you, eminently hireable up front. The other thing is, I think there is something to be said for, making sure that you're pointing out what got you to this point. I was on a chat earlier today with a number of people that work at career services. Binghamton was represented, and others. And they said, what about people that had an internship, but then they lost the internship because of COVID-19? What should you do? And I said, put it on your resume anyway. Just I had an internship lined up with this great company. It got taken from COVID-19, because that's a signal on the resume, on the application, that, boy, you worked hard. You went through the interview process, you got the offer, you were set to start, and then something out of your control took that away. But it still signals via one little line on your application that you accomplished something like that. So I think there's things like that again, if you're going to have a condensed recruitment period, which all likelihood that will continue for a little bit, you want to make sure you're putting those things forward early on.
Makes sense. Great. What is one strategy or practice you think your companies will hold on even after the pandemic? So I think one of the things we've all been saying here is it stinks that we've had to go through this pandemic, but we're all learning things, right? So what have maybe each of you learned that you're like, you know what, even after post-COVID, we're gonna keep doing this? Lisa, you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say remote work arrangements. As you know, Denise, we've been that dance, and clinical workers obviously can't work from home, but certainly our support staff, people in HR and IT and supply chain and finance, maybe we'll save some costs on real estate that is, that is no longer needed because we let people appreciate. The flip side of that, though, is it's interesting because people want to come back to work. They are like sort of desperate for human interaction. So, we just have to figure out how that's going to work. But I think that's one big thing. And I would hazard a guess, Denise, it's going to be the same for you.
Completely the same thing for higher ed.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. Let's see here. Okay, as a senior, I'm anxious about the job market. But given that there cannot be human-to-human contact, I feel I will need to look for something to do over the internet. How can I get myself involved on the web through social media networking sites? And Jim, you want to take that one?
I think I talked a little bit about reaching out through LinkedIn and meeting people, but obviously if you're in the software industry, you can also work on open source projects and actually contribute your own thoughts. You can also meet people in all sorts of special interest, groups, and let's say Facebook or others. I personally have been approached by a lot of people over LinkedIn. I generally accept, for instance, Binghamton students who have questions. If you link in, connect to me, I generally do my best to answer them. I don't know if I've ever had more than, if 500 of you came all at once, I might have a problem.
Tomorrow you might wish you didn't say that.
But generally I accept links from anyone from Binghamton who tries. And we'll try to answer the questions, but can't promise that I'll get to it, if I get 500. But anyway, I think it's a great way to start, and you can also, post what you're interested in and do things along those lines. I know everybody talked about volunteer sites. Well, I think a whole lot of people are volunteering. You'll get to meet people who are doing things that you'd be surprised at. I'm be helping out at my local food bank this weekend with my wife. So there'll be people who are, that you might be surprised at if you're willing to get out, put yourself out there and volunteer. You might meet people as well.
And then from the Career Center, we have now a new platform. It's called Mentor Match. And we actually have many alumni in there who are waiting to talk to you. So you can go on our webpage and sign up to Mentor Match. And this is a perfect way to network. And especially the alumni who signed into Mentor Match, they're obviously willing to help you, right? Because they signed up for it. So definitely that's another platform for students to check into. So the question for Lisa, you mentioned that clinical workers are being hired often during this time. What place will these new workers hold once the pandemic has passed? Will workers be laid off as a result of the end of the pandemic?
No, I mean, in fact, it's such an interestingly strange time. Our hospitals are at half capacity, which has never happened since I've been here. We're usually more than 100% capacity. So we're really actually excited about, strange as this might say, patients coming back and having their elective surgeries, which have been postponed, and having their doctor's visits and so forth. And knowing now that maybe for the first time ever, we will have enough staff and not be always trying to play catch up in the recruitment space. So I actually think, we're looking forward to more patients being in our facilities, getting care and treatment that they need. That's been a real blow to our industry, as strange as that may seem. People who need sort of routine care or can schedule their surgeries who aren't critically ill can't come right now. And that's really difficult for people. So they're putting off treatments and care and services because we're pretty much fully out taking care of COVID patients, but there are far fewer of them in the capacity that we would generally see. We're building out capacity around ICU, clinical acumen and clinical skill set, because if you listen to the news at all, I mean, that's where the most critical patients end up. They end up in the ICUs and so forth. So we have to change over regular medical beds to be ICU beds, and there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a special skill set for that. But then we're hiring other staff and up training them, clinical staff. So there will be a place for you if you work at Lifespan during this pandemic. We're happy about that.
Again, I think this is great about this panel. The students are able to see there's hope in all of this, right?
Absolutely.
There's definitely opportunity. Another question we have here is, do you think a year or two from now, employers will still be sympathetic to gaps in industry-specific experiences on resumes during this time?
Yes. I'm not even going to wait. Absolutely. Somebody I talked to just the other day used a phrase that I have been holding dear ever since, which is, there will be forgiveness. We're going through this too. If I meet anyone at any point from here on in recruiting that says, well, I have a gap, and if it's anywhere during spring of 2020 or thereabouts, done. I think as a student, let me just say this to all of you out there. I feel so bad that this is disrupting your college experience, particularly for you seniors out there, but for all of you. I see it with my own kids. I have a high schooler and a middle schooler. It's just awful that you're being deprived of, even things like prom and the interaction that you have. So it's absolutely awful. We, as employers, as people that are a little further along in life, we're seeing all kinds of disruption also. And we're, more than any time that I can remember, we're in this together. And so I've gotten questions like, oh, well, my school's only offering these online courses pass-fail. Will that be held against me? No, it will not. And by the way, if an organization says, well, you only took pass-fail during COVID, that's not an organization you should be working with. Let me just point that out.
Yeah, that's a
so yeah, I think there will be forgiveness. We are in this together. And one last thing I'll say is the sentiment I'm getting from some of our students, for example, that have already graduated. We hired some 80 or 90 Binghamton students this year that due to start in the summer. They'll probably start a little later in the year, maybe in the fall. We're still figuring out start dates. They're coming to us and saying, hey, I get it. I'm just happy to have a job. I'm happy to be in touch. We're saying a lot of those same things, like happy that you're understanding, happy, so there is a togetherness, employer employee, through all this that hopefully you should look for. It should be one of the things that you're looking for in an employer, but also know that I think it's one of those things, that's going to always be kind of okay, because we're going to remember what it was like to be going through this as a collective group.
And then you check off resilience, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
exactly.
So for the gap, you just put resilience, building resilience.
That's right.
So this is more out of a personal question with Dan. You had mentioned that the firm's daily wellness calls, and one of the students are wondering, what are each of you doing to stay happy and positive at home? Besides locking up your kids, the dog. So what are some of the things you're doing?
I mean, I'm happy to start. We're trying to maintain some sort of schedule, even that we're all at home. So we all, I have my wife, my two kids. We all kind of get up. It's make your own breakfast, and then the morning there's a couple hours of work. We try to convene for lunch, and just be around the kitchen and kind of forget work and school, and then go back to our things. We're staying physically active, so we bike a lot as a family. We have a volleyball net in the backyard. We play a little volleyball together. I think that physical activity is really, really helpful. And then I'll go back to the mindfulness thing. I'm not like a meditator. I'm not like I'll sit there with my legs crossed and whatever. But I do take at least.
You should try it, Mister.
No, Lisa, I'm a believer, because now I do take 10 or 15 minutes a day and just breathe. Like literally breathe. I did learn some breathing techniques. Headspace is an app I use. It's really good meditation, and it makes a difference in the entire day. And the days I don't get to it, it is a mistake. So just some little things like that. It doesn't have to take a lot of your day. It makes a real difference.
Jim, what have you been up to?
Well, I have been exercising every morning. I go for a run. My daughter, we have lunch together as a family, which we haven't done in years. And I'm playing ping pong with my youngest daughter after work. And I also do meditate. So,
who wins? Tim, who's winning at ping pong?
Yeah, let's I'm the competitive person.
Than my daughter still. No, we'll see.
And I would just, one thing I would add that's new for me, because I all of the above, exercise and to a schedule and meditate and all of those things. But I find that if I'm not really purposeful about not watching the news, I can get sucked into the news. So I started a 1,000-piece crossword puzzle. So I loved that Harvey's video from yesterday or today.
Yep.
1,000-piece crossword puzzle. I felt so validated.
Yeah.
But it's a great exercise, great sort of just a different kind of mental stimulation. So I enjoyed adding that to the portfolio of things to keep me reasonably sane.
Yeah, well, I was actually in a webinar yesterday, and the person was on, and behind her husband, which he didn't know he was on camera, was doing a puzzle. And and I think this is how when the cat came, Lisa, we saw he says there's the cat.
That's life.
Right, and that's what I think that's been so powerful. Like when I'm on with my staff and their kids are running up to them, and like the first week they're trying to oh no, get away, It's like no, this is okay. Bring them on in. Let's
Yeah.
So let's see. Lots of questions come here. How do you? This is a good one. Do you have any advice for making a virtual introduction, especially now that we are not able to have conversations? Let's see, these kinds of conversations come more natural for me in person than they do virtually. So any advice there? And Lisa, you want to maybe take that one?
Yeah, be brave. They don't know you, so they don't know that it's uncomfortable for you to do this in a different way. So just be who you want to be and reach out. I mean, many of you brave souls are reaching out to me on LinkedIn right now. Awesome. I'll respond to you when we get off. I'm sure you're tapping Dan and Jim as well, but I don't know you, and potential employers don't know you. So you can be whoever you want to be. So think about who you'd be in person and just, type that out, or ask somebody for a Zoom. Ask them if they, say, I'm much better in person, would love to connect with you on Zoom. Be brave.
And sometimes if you look at it, it's almost lower risk, right? Because you don't know that person. That person's not standing right in front of you. So, so here's one. Should job seekers be discouraged by the competition from record high unemployment levels? Or do you feel that there will be job creation to match the demand that we are currently seeing unemployment? Dan, you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, it's more of the latter. Should you be discouraged about not being able to find a job right now in this crazy time? No, you should not be discouraged. You should say, this stinks. You could be upset. You could be disappointed. You could feel cheated. Hey, this was my time to find a job, and now so another 6 million people have to find. So you can feel all of those things, but don't be discouraged. Like anything we've been through, whether you want to go back to 9/11, you can go to 2008, anything, we find a way to get back. We find a way as a society, and as Americans to find a way back. And the hardest part, my wife said this the other day, and she's the smart one in the family. She goes, if I just knew the date for how long I had to kind of go through this, and there was a date certain on the other end, it would be much easier. But that's what's confounding us, is that this is not a time-bound thing. We don't know how long it will last, and we're hoping it's shorter than longer. But I do feel like, especially for many of you, where you're at the start of your career or still in the heart of your academic career, that's a little bit of a silver lining compared to what Lisa was saying before. There's people that are, that were a couple of years away from retirement or mid-career and now find themselves trying to support themselves or a family with no income. Relatively speaking, these are issues that you will come out the other side of. For the most part, you got a great education, a great background. You're early enough in your career. This is not going to be the defining moment of your career. So I think there's a lot of cause for optimism there. If you can just be, Lisa, you said it great. If you just be patient and do be productive in the meantime, but know that this too shall pass.
Well, really appreciate it. I think the one thing, and as we've all said, when you do watch the news, it tends to be a little bit not so positive. So it's been really good to hear reality, right? I mean, there was reality to this, but also positive, and we're all learning a lot through this. And I want to end it on a real high note. So I'm going to ask my last question. What one piece of advice, positive advice or feedback, do you want the students to know right now? And Jim, how about we start with you?
Well, I can tell you, I live in the Silicon Valley. The skies are cleaner than they have ever been since I moved here. So there's one goodness, and we heard it before from Lisa, but I think that this will open up new opportunities for people, working 2 days at home. Things that we've never been able to do, people suddenly realize are possible. And I think that will be give everybody more flexibility than they've had before. And I'm actually looking forward to, when we're through this crisis, being able to make use of this more. And I have a feeling a whole lot of other industries will be able to do that. This is just a whole new level of flexibility for people. So I think there's a positive.
Great. And Lisa?
Watch for the great stories. There are so many amazing acts of kindness and gestures of goodwill and supportive opportunities. Spend some time every day looking for that, and I think you'll get a real lift out of that. And just power through. Dan talked about two really pivotal times in sort of the contemporary generation, 9/11 and the downturn of the economy. We got through both of those things. We will get through this, and your time will come. It will.
All right, Dan.
Yeah, I would just say, don't miss an opportunity. If someone would have told me, 6 months ago, before any of this was even a thing, that I mean, I travel half the time. I'm all over the world. I'm like, I have this crazy schedule. Someone said, listen, I'm going to gift you 2, 3, 4 months where you get to be with your family 24/7, hugging on your children, loving on your wife, eating meals together, playing Monopoly. I would have said, you are out of your mind. We go 100 miles an hour, and that's the only speed my family knows. And now I'm doing all those things. And while I would never wish a time like this on anyone, what is that in your life? What is that in your life? Not the stuff you always wanted to get to, not your to-do list. My house is as clean as it's ever been. It's not that. But
I think that's everybody.
Yeah, seriously. But what is it that how can you use this time to get closer to the people that you're close with? even if it's not physically, right? What can you do to really come out the other side and, man, I'm glad I had that time to talk with so-and-so, or be with so-and-so, or do this, or learn a language, you know, things like that. What is that for you? And spend some time thinking about it and focus on that. It will get you through all this other stuff that's barking in your ear from the news a lot better, and you'll be a lot better to show for it on the other side.
Well, thank you so much. Love to end it on such a positive note, and really want to thank all three of you. We know you're a tad busy right now.
Yeah.
So taking time out to help the students and to provide them with some good guidance on how to get through COVID-19. And for all the students, we want to let you know that we're here for you in the ways the Career Center has always been. We've just moved all of our service, like all of you have done now, online. So you can schedule an appointment with a career consultant using Hire Bing. Many resources online, and we've actually just added one. It's basically finding internships and full-time positions within COVID-19. So great resource, and we're adding more and more resources to that web page all the time. So for example, you know, there's the 500 companies that are hiring, you know, so it's, again, just really good information. We're also offering many virtual events like this. And we're actually virtually going to go to DC on Friday. We're supposed to have our employer treks as we do in New York City and also California, but we're on Plan B, and so we're doing it virtually. So make sure to sign up for those. And thanks again to the panelists and for the students. We really look forward to working with you online. And everyone, have a great night.
Thanks, Denise.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.